Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. It's Friday. That means it's the Rex and Robbie show. What's up, Rex?
What's going on, Robbie? I'm always happy to see Robbie, to do his shows because his shows end up being on a Friday. So that means it's the end of the week.
Yeah, right? You're like, yes, I get to do the show with Robbie. That means it's the end of
That's
the week
right.
and the weekend.
If Robbie's show was on a Tuesday, I'd probably be a lot grumpier.
Oh man, don't you do a show with AR on Tuesdays? Are you grumpy?
Yeah, I'm pretty grumpy. It's the Angry Man show. See? So it's a different shtick.
Okay. I like it.
So, all right. So I'm going to start the show off with a little bit of football talk. So I read, I think this morning, a new conspiracy theory has come up, and it involves Tom Brady. And what this conspiracy theory is that the entire retirement issue was a fake out. Okay, he was never going to retire, and that during the season, last season, midway through the season, there was a plan that was concocted that Brady would fake retire, that the Bucs would release him, then he would become part owner of the Miami Dolphins, and then magically become their starting quarterback. And here you go. You ready? Here's the kicker.
Okay.
And they were going to get Sean Payton to become the head coach. So this is the conspiracy theory that's floating around. Now, all of this got messed up, okay, completely messed up by the Brian Flores lawsuit.
Okay.
Because at that point they couldn't do it, obviously. And they go further to explain that the whole reason that the Dolphins ownership was in Flores' lawsuit, that he was told that he would be paid a bonus for every game that they lost. So it all kind of fits together because, obviously with a losing season, then ownership and front office would have a justified reason to get rid of Flores, as opposed to what happened now. Okay, you fired or you quote unquote fired a head coach who came and turned the program around.
Yeah.
And the reason was because they were going to bring Sean Payton in, they're going to bring Tom Brady in and all that. And then of course, when Tom Brady made his retirement announcement was the exact same day that Brian Flores had filed his lawsuit against the Dolphins and various other teams. I think the Texans have been added to that now. So that is the conspiracy theory floating around the NFL. Now, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but I don't know, man. The Ducks are lining up for this one.
Well, I'm curious as to what strange corner of Reddit this came from. Like, are you seeing this reported like on news radio and stuff like that?
No. I'm seeing it on the internet, and I can't remember the source, but it is a regular sports source that I check.
Okay.
So, and with any rumors that you have in any professional sport, they usually put out a disclaimer that this conjecture, they're guessing, whatever. This one says confidential sources. So you take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, okay. I got you. Okay.
All
that's
right.
That's an interesting idea. It seems rather complex, like a very complex, complicated scheme.
But it would also add credence as to why Arians is now moving to front office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because this is a man who said at the end of the last season that he's not hanging up the headphones anytime soon.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, so I got to admit, it all smells a little fishy to me. Oh, you'll excuse the pun.
Well, that's interesting. So outside of that, sports talk wise, the Lakers have been officially eliminated from the playoffs. Good.
I'm sorry about that. No,
I'm not. I'll tell you what. This is the most aggravating thing. It's been an aggravating season being a Lakers fan, seeing this team obviously not work from the start and just hearing excuses after excuses. There was a quote from Anthony Davis this week that said, the hardest part of all of this, basically, I'm paraphrasing, is that we don't know what we could have been. Basically saying, like, I was hurt and then this person was hurt. And I'm like, nah, bruh, we saw what y'all were. We're not worried about what you could have been. Like, it's such a headache.
I have to admit, I read a stat about that, and it said when all three of them were playing, they were still just barely above 500, I think.
Yeah.
So there was no magical combination of three of them, being on the court together. They still look like crap.
Yes.
And you've collected a team of obviously the oldest team in the NBA, but I mean old by a lot. I mean, it's not like a little bit. Even your role players are old. So you got to wonder. And then, you're plagued by injuries. Yeah, because you're all old.
Yes.
That's just the way it is. I know I'm old. Injuries that used to last maybe 24 hours in my 20s now could last like weeks. I mean, it's crazy. So I mean that's a factor. You're looking at guys that are older, and you get a compilation of guys that are older. You have no young kind of talent sitting there that can maybe come in and turn the momentum around. It was an experiment that obviously a lot of people, I mean, Westbrook was a huge mistake.
Yeah, the problem is we're looking forward to this next season. We may still be stuck with Westbrook because it's going to be hard to unload. Now, I've heard rumors that Charlotte might be interested, and that would be take them.
You're still going to have to absorb the money. There's no way Charlotte's interested in Westbrook and taking over all that money.
Yeah, and it's like a $47 million option I think he has for this final year, and just whatever. I'm so mad. Luckily, baseball is back, so my Yankees play their first game today against the Red Sox. I'm very excited for that. So go Yankees. I hope that turns out well, and it's going to leave the stain of this Lakers season away from me for a little bit. So I'm excited for that.
As you know, as a form of personal protest, I will be unable to talk about the upcoming baseball season.
I'm aware of that, so that's okay. I'll still give everybody the updates on the Yankees. So
Have you ever played Beat the Streak?
Beat the Streak. What is that?
It is an app that me and a bunch of friends are in, and basically you're trying to beat the Maggio streak. So you're trying to get 52 in a row.
Okay.
It is so basically the way that the app works is that you can pick one or up to three people per day, and if they get a hit, then your streak continues. If they don't, you bounce back to zero.
Oh, that's neat.
The odds of winning this are almost as impossible as winning the Powerball.
Really?
It's crazy. Yeah, nobody has even really come close. Some have. I think me and my friends. I think between all of us, the best streak that any one of us has had is maybe 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get beyond it. It is almost an impossible thing. I do miss playing that. That was fun, playing with my friends. But
that actually sounds – it's one of those things that seems like it would be, oh, that's easy, right? Like, totally not, because people go over all the time, right?
Statistically, you're going to pick the wrong guy. Yeah. All right? It's just, and they're little things that they do. It's they kind of – you can sort of cheat, but if you look at it statistically, it's actually worse for you. So you can pick up to 3, right? You would think that would increase your chances. But actually, if you look at the numbers, it exposes you more because, you put yourself in a position where you could go right back down to 0. So it's really a very tough game.
Oh, I might have to check that out. It actually sounds kind of fun.
Check that out. And it's a lot of fun if you play with a bunch of people too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's not interlinked like that. You just kind of text each other like, I got 16, or you take a screenshot or whatever. They used to be able to link it so you could play in teams, but they eliminated that feature about 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know why.
Okay.
So check it out. There you go.
All right, I will. And I will encourage everybody to comment below on this video. You'll be entered to win the contest. That contest winner will be announced on Monday's show. That's over at The Experience. Link in the description below. That show is every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Me, Rex, sometimes John, and the whole crew over there. We're having a good time. Pop culture discussion. Great comic books and collectibles and really one-of-a-kind items available for purchase there. So everybody should check that out. And before we get to the topic of the day, which is last week we talked about who the greatest comic book artists of all time were. Today we're going to talk about who are the greatest comic book writers. But just real quick, I want to touch base on Moon Knight #2. I'll be covering it in depth on Sunday night for Rockin Robbie Live. What about you, Rex? What did you think about episode 2?
I have to admit, I watched it and I'm still coming out a little meh. What it is that at the end of every episode of the first 2 anyway, I'm kind of like left with the, is that it? Is there no more? And it's, and I know that the fans out there, like I have a friend who's a huge fan and he's like, it was great. It was great. And when I talk to him the next time, I'm like, I'll be honest with you, it was meh. I said, I appreciate Oscar Isaac. I think he's doing a phenomenal job playing 2 roles. So I really, really enjoy watching him doing his thing. But the whole storyline is like, I maybe you suggested, I forget who suggested it, during one of the shows that maybe they should have taken that Peacemaker route and dropped like 2 or 4 episodes at one time.
Yeah.
Because I'm just walking away. Will I watch episode 3 next week? Yes, I absolutely will. But I'm not walking away with the kind of, I can't wait to see what they do in episode 3. You know, it just, each time I feel like, okay, all right, we've barely scratched the surface. We're going to get a little deeper next week. You know, it seems like it's over too quick. So, you know, I like it, but the jury's out. But Morbius is taking an absolute beating.
Yeah. I mean,
oh, my gosh. People have, I think somebody on Wednesday during the show actually posted that they went to see it and they thought Morbius was so bad it actually made the Eternals look good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how bad it was.
Well, I heard from someone, a friend of mine who saw it, said at least it was shorter than the Eternals. At least it wasn't 2.5 hours long. I heard this week. I heard this week that Jared Leto did method acting for his Morbius role, right?
I heard about this.
And that like when he would have to go to the bathroom or something, he would still be on those crutches. And it was taking so long for him to like go off set and do what he needed to do and come back that they worked out an agreement where they would put him in a wheelchair and wheel him to the what the bro,
I read that.
You're making Morbius, man. Like
it just, you know, why can't they all be like Oscar Isaac? I don't know. Just show up, do your job, man.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac is great in Moon Knight. I don't think there's anything wrong in the execution, right? Except for the CG. I still like think some of that looks really, really wonky. Outside of that, though, I have some issues with the tone of it, right? I get that it's the MCU, I get that it's Marvel, and I get that they think that people want the jokey aspect, and I don't mind jokes and humor in something dark, but this should be more somber, I think. Moon Knight's a darker character, and Mr. Knight, when he puts on like the suit, you know, like in the comic books, that version of Moon Knight's scarier almost than with the cape and everything, right? Because he's just like brutal. And they made him so jokey. The mask, the way the eyes were moving, and the way it was so jokey, I immediately started thinking of Deadpool. And I'm like, the style of Deadpool should not come across my brain when I'm watching Moon Knight. That being said, the performance for what it was really good. The directing and some of the scenes were really powerful at times. But I don't like that overly jokey approach to it. And it makes me really concerned because one of my favorite Marvel characters is Blade. And I'm like, what are they going to do to Blade if this is what they're doing with Moon Knight? But we still got some episodes to come. So
I'm gonna hold out on 3. If they don't start moving things along, then I'm gonna come out with more of a negative impression. It's like by the time we get to next week, you really got to have something. You know, you've alluded to all these things. Now we need to really get to some gravy here. You know, to the meat of the whole process. You know, and that's what I'm waiting to see. But again, you know, Oscar Isaac, I can't say enough about him because you're really playing 2 roles, 2 very different characters at the same time. So, you know, that's a real challenge. I think he's really pulled it off. You know, I think he's done a great job with it.
He's amazing because it's not just different accents and stuff. It's literally like different body language and posture and like every little nuance is there. The eyes.
Yes.
The eyes are like so different.
Yeah, I would like to see them explore maybe, you know, a little bit more time with the Mark Spector character as opposed, because I gotta be honest with you. Okay, the museum gift shop dude is starting to work my last nerve. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you got monsters chasing you. Yes, you may be losing your mind. Why not just give yourself up? Okay, to the other personality at this point and see what comes of it. All right. Now you're getting kind of whiny. So it's like, you know, even I'm at the, you know, before he surrenders his, you know, personality or whatever you want to call it, I'm almost at the point like, dude, just let him in. Okay, come on. Right? Enough already.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm agreeing there. So, all right, there's the Moon Knight talk. Now let's get into the topic. Who are the greatest comic book writers of all time? And we want to hear your thoughts, so comment below. You'll be entered automatically when you comment to enter a contest. And like I said, that winner will be announced on Monday's show over at The Experience. So, Rex, I'm going to throw it to you first. You had a really good list of comic book artists last week. So I'm really curious to see what you think about who are the greatest comic book writers and what criteria you used to come up with this list?
All right. So what I did this time was a little different from what I did last week, right? So this time I kind of went personal first, and then each one after had its own specific reason. Okay. And then we have the honorable mention part. All right. So first and foremost, for me personally, has to be Chris Claremont. We've talked about this endlessly. 17 years writing the X-Men. He defined what I saw the X-Men as. As I said, I love that period with him and John Byrne working together. Obviously, the art and the story. But, for me, what Chris Claremont did was he, at the age that I was reading it, he redefined what a superhero was in my mind. And I think universally that superheroes were just everyday people with these burdens and these problems. They just happen to be superpowers, whatever they may be, or mutant powers, however you want to call it. But they were dealing with the same kind of issues that we were dealing with in the real world, whether it be government or your job or what the school at that time. I think maybe it helped that a lot of this happened within the background of the school for the gifted children, and it made me look at superheroes in a different light. And maybe that's why we joke with you, me, AR. About Cyclops and people have this certain idea about Cyclops and they dislike him for it. But for me, it was probably Chris Claremont that created that this guy has a power that he cannot control. It's super powerful, but he has to wear something, a prosthetic, if you will, in the ruby glasses to prevent his power from destroying everything, under the sun. So he looks different. He has to approach life differently. He can't be without the glasses. It kind of added a human element. So Chris Claremont was number one for me. So number two would be Louise Simonson, only because, beyond the fact that as an editor and as a writer, but more so that she was a woman in a male-dominated industry and one of the first to really separate herself, if you will. As somebody you would remember in the comic book universe, because it was predominantly male dominated at the time. Yeah. So for me, and then obviously her involvement, with Death of Superman and all that good stuff. But to me, it was the fact that she was probably the first notable woman in the industry to take a leading role in a sea full of men, right? Absolutely. Then the last three are purely what they did, to kind of what their writing did to change a particular character or characters. So Frank Miller, obviously, he redefined Batman, obviously, for all of us. Peter David and his extensive work. And then Neil Gaiman, obviously Sandman, and what he did there was a completely different take from what we knew before. So for me, that is really the top five. All of them had some significant lingering effect on comic books as a whole. Honorable mentions, real quick: Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, for the same reasons I stated, last show when we were talking about artists. Just that these guys were the precursor and created what exists today, which is obviously a multi-billion-dollar industry now.
Oh, absolutely. That's a fantastic list. I can tell that you like the X books in the 80s.
I mention it all the time. I know. So obviously made an impression. Well, left a mark.
There was a reason why it worked. Chris Claremont, who worked in tandem with Louise Simonson, because Louise would be the editor, or then she would write, and then Anna Cinti was also a part of that whole kind of vibe and stuff. So that was really cool. You had Frank Miller, which I love. He may be appearing on my list, so that's pretty dope. And then you had Neil Gaiman. Who was the other one?
Peter David.
Peter David. One of the most consistent freelance writers in superhero comimies.
Underappreciated, in my opinion, really.
I think so too. I started following a lot of people for them, Peter David, that's Hulk. He had like a 12-year run of Hulk or something like that. Huge run, right? And I've never really dived super into it like completely. I'm actually trying to work on piecing together that run so I can do so. But for me, it was his Aquaman run, like back in the 90s when like Aquaman lost his hand and he got the harpoon hand. And I just thought that was so badass. And like, I always loved Aquaman growing up for some reason, because he was like nobody's favorite hero. So like I wanted him to be my favorite superhero. And I just loved orange. and green together. It just looks cool. It looks like Halloween, right?
Right.
So Peter David, his work there, Young Justice, really great stuff. And he's still pumping out really high quality content at Marvel Comics today.
I know.
Yeah, still doing it. And Neil Gaiman. We got some overlap here. And so I'll get into mine real quick. So my honorable mentions would go to Warren Ellis, Ed Brubaker, and Brian K. Vaughan. I'll go ahead and throw him in there. I think that Ed Brubaker is one of those guys, when I read his books, I'm just like, I'm amazed at how good each and every single one of them are. You know what I'm saying? And anybody else who, he pretty much writes mostly just in like the crime genre. And your stuff can wind up being so cliche doing that. But his stuff doesn't. Brian K. Vaughan, for obvious reasons, building the world of Saga and Why the Last Man. And he's done some really good work too outside of that. And then Warren Ellis is one of my favorites, man. Really great sci-fi concepts. Planetary is one of my favorite comic books of all time. So if you've never read that, there you go. Also an honorable mention to Daniel Clowes. I mentioned him as an artist last week, but his writing is really top-notch too. So in the top 5, my number 5 is Jonathan Hickman. And he's a newer writer, but he makes his stand in my top 5. I love his sense of scale and scope. Sometimes he's telling a story that is deceptively simple because he pads it with all of this world building, all of this texture that he's creating, and he's always trying to do something different and grandiose in scale. East to West is the perfect example for me there. Number 4, I'm going Frank Miller. His work on Daredevil, his work on Batman, being an artist himself and understanding how to tell stories and pace them, that really helps him as a writer. For even when he's writing for someone like David Mazzucchelli, who is one of the greatest comic book artists of all time as well, like he knows what to do. When he's working with Dave Gibbons on Martha Washington, I love that stuff. And of course, his Sin City is always fun. Number 3, Neil Gaiman. That's mostly involving Sandman. When I first read Sandman, it almost ruined comics for me. Like, you read Sandman, and if you just immerse yourself in and read nothing but Sandman for like a week or two, and then go try to read the latest, I don't know, Superman or Wonder Woman or Spider-Man comic, you're just like, the hell is this?
Yeah, there's a depth there.
Yeah, there's so much richness and depth in his work that I think overall his comic book work is solid, but Sandman in particular, that's where it is. Number 2, Alan Moore. Alan Moore, comic book genius, cares so much about this industry, cares so much about the creators behind it, and understands the complexity and the nuance of story almost like nobody else. He writes some of the best page turns in the business. Watchmen, of course, is one of his more popular works. V for Vendetta is something that strikes me as something I really enjoy. And I also love how so Watchmen, V for Vendetta, these are dark books that they're deconstruction pieces on superhero or society, things like this, right? He's also able to do a book called Tom Strong, which is just like so pulpy and influenced by Doc Savage, and it's fun. And League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, terrible movie, brilliant comic book, right? So
I like that movie, actually.
Do you?
Quite honest. Yeah, I did.
Have you read the book?
I have not, so that might be why.
You should. Well, I mean, the movie is okay for what, the movie was directed by Stephen Norrington, who did the first Blade movie. And so I was really pumped to see this because I love League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and I love Blade. So I was like, let's watch it. And I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed, but it's been like over 18 years probably since I haven't seen it since it first came out, man. So
wow.
Yeah, that's a long time. Maybe I should check it out. Sean Connery's worth it alone, right? But I'm like, why did they make Mina a vampire? Anyway, but Alan Moore, obviously on that list. And also like books like Prometheus, like so crazy how he can stretch and does something different. And he's one of those writers who is verbose like Chris Claremont, right? But Alan Moore books don't feel like they're a chore to get through.
Right.
And obviously he's worked with some of the top artists of the industry. And there you go. So my number 1, not going to be surprised to anybody that's familiar with me or my taste here on this channel. It's Grant Morrison. I love Grant Morrison. I am obsessed with Grant's philosophy on life and existence and reality. Personally, I'm super into like his ideas. I am super into Grant's idea about comic books and superheroes, and the idea of superheroes as modern mythology, and treating the characters as such. So even when Grant's doing something crazy and out there, like the Invisibles or the Filth, he can do really grounded superhero work that also, even though it feels grounded in some kind of semblance of mythology and lore, it is still wild and out there. So Grant's JLA run in the 90s, that was the first Grant stuff I've read. Loved it. His JLA, Animal Man, Doom Patrol, the Invisibles to me is like, some people read through the Bible every year. That's what I do with the Invisibles, and it's like the same type of experience for me. Grant, I've done a video about this before, but Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, both professed magicians, both comic book writers, and they both don't really like each other. So there's this kind of feud that goes around, right? Of that they, but their styles are so similar yet so different. And what I usually like to say is Alan Moore sometimes likes to bring the superheroes into our world and see what our world would do to superheroes. What would superheroes be like in the real world? Grant takes me out of this world and into this comic book world where everything is, the colors are bright. The evil is still evil, just like more evil. The darks are darker, but the brights are brighter. You get what I'm saying? And I like that dichotomy between both of their styles. So for me, it's Grant. Grant will throw 20 ideas at the wall. Only one of them really matters to the narrative thread of the story, but all the other 19 ideas, anybody else would build a 60-issue series on. So that's my top 5.
Well, it's nice to see, it's nice to see in a sense, a lot of these writers are getting the kind of appreciation because they've really become screenplay writers now.
Yeah. Because
with the plethora of MCU, DC Universe, although they've got their problems with the Flash and everything else now, it's really these stories that the writers have written in comic books through the years that are now becoming screenplays, and I think that's significant.
Yeah, and a lot of these writers are making that jump. Like Ed Brubaker started working doing scripts. Brian K. Vaughan was a script writer on Lost, for instance, and still works on TV, I believe. And so you see that, like Jonathan Hickman, I don't know if they're still going forward with the East to West stuff, but he was working on that script, and they're actually bringing in the creator sometimes to work on these scripts. And I think that's a good idea. Jeff Johns made that leap into Hollywood and now back into comics. And he's another one that's probably deserving on being on a lot of people's lists as a powerful force. And look what he did, his impact in the industry. He made Green Lantern, Hal Jordan in particular, a super popular character again after just a long time of nobody caring,
No, I definitely agree. And then when you look at it's an interesting thing because we've discussed this issue from several different facets. Are they running out of ideas and, pulling more and more from the comic books in order to find content with which to make movies? And it's true. And, next logical progression is these writers get the recognition they need and they deserve. You're really providing the seed ideas for all these movies that these guys are running out of ideas about.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see it move in this direction, though.
Last night I had Doug Wagner and Tim Odlin on the show. They got an upcoming Image book, Beware the Eye of Odin. We were having a chat about all this kind of stuff, and we brought into the idea that I completely lost where I was going with this, Rex. Like, completely lost where I was going with that whole damn thing. So, this is what we were talking about, is the idea of what's so special about comics? It's like there's so little people involved in the creation of a comic sometimes. Sometimes it's just one person, sometimes it's 2, and then 3 or 4, right? But it's a small team. In the movies or on TV, you have hundreds, if not thousands of people. You have all these criteria that they have to go through. All these people coming in being like, oh, well, people want this. We got to change this. So that's more of a manufactured product. It's more like McDonald's, whereas, comic books are more like going to a really nice local burger joint. You know what I'm saying? Because you got a guy that's not just giving you a lowest common denominator form of a hamburger that most people are going to like. He's giving you, they're giving you something special, something different. And so that direct creativity and it comes through more pure to me in comics. You watch movies now, you don't see many original things. You know, I mean, you have your exceptions. A24 seems to be doing it, other studios, but for the most part, you don't get original content anymore in the cinema. It's all based on comics or movies or older movies or other things. In comic books, you still get truly original creations and ideas. Sandman, East of West, The Invisibles, those are planetary. Those are original concepts that play with tropes and other ideas, but do something new and different with them. That's why Hollywood keeps coming calling, right?
Well, you know, I mean, that's one of the big complaints is that, you know, independent pictures are not getting produced anymore because, you know, everybody's looking at what the box office draw is. So they're trying to get the, you know, as you say, that prepared product to appeal to the you know, the most amount of people that they can. Yeah. So they're trying to find that common denominator. So, you know, that's one of the criticisms about cinema now is that these kinds of what we see in comics is no longer happening. So maybe it's going back to that stage where the original ideas are only going to come from that, you know, from a comic book sort of era, because big studios are really right now only willing to take that chance on such things. So, you know, maybe that's converting a little bit. Who knows? Yeah, who knows? But it's nice to see that comics are still relevant in you know, in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great discussion, Rex. As usual, every Friday we have a great discussion, topic oriented, something usually about the comic book industry or just pop culture in general. This is always a pleasure, Rex. Thank you for being here, buddy.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Oh, we got to draw the winner of the contest.
We do.
Forgot all about that.
The winner will receive the Red Sonja 45th anniversary trading card, promo card. And I don't know if you can see it there.
You can see it a little bit.
But that's the prize for the day. And just so everybody knows, we do a drawing on Robbie's show on Friday, and we do a drawing on our show on Monday. If you enter anything into the chats for Robbie's show tonight, you will be automatically entered into the drawing on Monday night. And then anybody who enters the chat on Monday night, we will draw on Robbie's Friday show. So this is anybody who left something on our Monday show in the chats will be entered for the drawing.
All right. I got the chat loaded up from Monday's show, and I clicked the button. Adrian Montanez.
Oh, Adrian. Cool.
Is the winner. Thank you all for joining in the shows, and it's your conversation, your chats, your comments that really drive this stuff, and we love them, and we love having conversations with you live on Monday and then here on this show on Friday. So Rex, thank you, buddy. We really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing what's in store for Monday night's show, buddy.
Well, I'm curious to see what you have in store for a topic for next Friday.
Me too. We'll figure it out. All right. On behalf of everybody here at PCP and, of course, for Rex, thank you so much for watching. Station